Hey everyone, just a quick note about this coming week's content. You'll note you're reading chapters 5 and 7. And we're going to circle back to chapter 6 the week after. Lots of theories, lots of terminologies in this coming week. Chapter 5 is very theory heavy, will be a great reference for your final paper when you're asked to incorporate a theory. Chapter 7 is all about cultural diversity. If you've taken cross-cultural psych, this is going to be a summary for you. This is going to be a recap. If you have not, I was a little disappointed in how they laid out the chapter because they throw all these cultural diversity, equality, equity concepts at you like bam, 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 bam. And then like literally the last 2-3 pages of the chapter, they talk about, so how does this apply to community psychology? So it feels a little disjointed as you're reading it. It's not as fluid. There's no perfect textbook. They cover important concepts. What I would actually recommend doing is read chapter 5. And then when you get to chapter 7, start on page 250. Start at the end of the chapter and read that section on diversity and the practices of community psychology. And what's the other stuff? And the designing culturally anchored community programs and the conclusion. Because if you read the last 3 pages of the chapter first, then as you're reading through the rest of the chapter and going through all of this cultural terminology and statistics about cultural trends and influences of race, ethnicity, religion, sexism, all of this, you'll have a much better context for why are we discussing this in a cultural psychology class. So that would be my advice for getting through that chapter. There's a lot of controversial material covered. We're not going to take the time in this class to debate that in any sort of political sense because that's not what this class is about. But it's just know as you go into it that there are discussions of white privilege. There are discussions of sexism and patriarchy and conversations that tend to be a little bit uncomfortable. And the chapter actually opens with a quote about how this is uncomfortable material, but psychologists in all branches of psychology need to discuss it. So know that we get into some controversial topics. Know that it is very, very, very definition heavy. And know that, again, if you start on page 250 and read those concluding few pages before getting into the actual content of the chapter, you'll have a much nicer context for why are we taking the time to discuss this in community psychology versus keeping this to like a cross-cultural psych course. So let me know if you have any questions, comments, concerns. I wish we had the space in this class to get into some of the debates about these issues more thoroughly than what we have the space to offer, since we want to keep it centered on community psychology. However, if these are issues that you would like to have more space to discuss, I do also teach cross-cultural psychology in the fall. So be on the lookout for that course. If you find this information absolutely captivating and you want to see how it applies to other branches of psychology in a class where we do have some room and some time to debate it further. So I think that is all I have to say. So in conclusion, chapters 5, chapter 7, be prepared for a lot of theory, be prepared for a lot of terminology. We're not going to argue about any of these concepts, and start at the end of chapter 7 when you get there, page 250. And as always, email me with questions, comments, and concerns. Talk to you soon.